Alright, so you may not be surprised to hear that there's a lot of criticism out there for how we measure intelligence, and that there's a lot of factors of why that is. The first and foremost is the different theories of what intelligence is, the different definitions, due to the fact that most of these intelligence measures are measuring general intelligence. But that is only the tip of the iceberg. So we're going to talk about even more of these criticisms of these intelligence measures, which are the IQ tests. So the general issues of testing. So overall, the main issues are that the IQ improves with repeated testing. So this is kind of a problem. So this means, can you learn to perform better on the test? So like with more practice you can do better. That's not really how intelligence tests should work. You shouldn't be able to prepare for the test. You should just be it should be measuring your abilities naturally, right? Or before the test at least. And IQ changes with age. So can you get more intelligent? But the thing is, maybe, there are environmental factors into intelligence, but there's also a lot of genetic factors. But here's the weird thing, is that IQ changes with age, but it doesn't always go up and up. IQ actually peaks around college age. It peaks in your late teens and 20s, and then it slightly drops after that. It's super weird. Why should that happen? Do you actually get less intelligent? Is that possible? And then there's cultural differences found in IQ scores. Does that mean there's bias in the measure? It's hard to believe that there's actually differences culturally in intelligence. So, could the measure have something to do with these differences found? And so basically the bottom line is, the IQ actually testing intelligence? Are these questions really intelligence questions? So are they asking the right things? A lot of people think that there's way too strong of an emphasis on some areas, such as verbal skills. So this goes with the general intelligence thing. Or you could think of it in terms of the triarchic theory, where the IQ might be focusing way too much on the analytical skill intelligence rather than creativity or practical intelligence. And the items are way too reflective of school and learning. So it's not necessarily testing intelligence, it's kind of more testing knowledge, which are different things. Intelligence is your ability, knowledge is facts that you've acquired. And then it also incorporates certain words or references that not everybody knows. So that's an issue, because is that your fault if you don't know a reference that a question makes, and therefore you can't answer it accurately because you just don't understand the question? Does that make you less intelligent because you don't get the reference that they're implying? So a good example of this is, who wrote Faust? The question from the last video. Does it make you less intelligent for not knowing that? I didn't know that. Is it bad for you to not have been exposed to that? Does it make you lesser? And then there's cultural bias. there's evidence that there is cultural bias in IQ testing. So there is European descent and Caucasian favoritism specifically. And this happened because the men who created these tests are old white guys. That's just how it was. These tests were made a while back. They were early 1900s is when they were made originally. And back in those days, it was exclusively white men who studied psychology. And they used words and situations that were most familiar to them. So this could reflect their own particular culture. And they might even not be aware that they are talking about their particular culture and excluding other cultures. It's just how they're familiar with life. So some examples of this, these are actual questions that have been used on intelligence tests, is what does esoteric mean? See, this is a knowledge question. This is learning what esoteric means. This isn't an intelligence question. Or showing a child a picture of a teacup, then asking which goes with this, a saucer, a truck, a flower, or a pot. But the thing is, the answer is saucer, but not everybody has saucers in their houses. Not many people use saucers anymore. Especially middle, lower class people, I don't see a lot of people using saucers. So this could be excluding people who don't, or might not even know what that is. It might not come to them that, oh yeah, of course. And then another one is what is meant with the saying killing two birds with one stone. Well, if you are a first-generation immigrant where English is not your first language and you have just learned English within the past few years, you are still getting used to all the colloquialisms, all of the sayings in English. Would you know what killing two birds with one stone means? Have you heard that saying before? Is that really fair to someone that might not be from the culture with that saying? And then, unfortunately, there's also racial bias in IQ tests. So, like I said, most of these tests were created in the early 1900s by white men. And so, it's just a fact that our history has a lot of racism in it in the past, especially in that era. And so J.R. Stetson is a good example of this. In 1897, he tested 500 white and 500 black kids. How he did this was reading 4 stanzas of poetry aloud to the kids and then had them repeat it back to him. And what he found is that the African American children did better at this task than white children. So he concluded that it must not be a valid measure of intelligence. That, oh no, this can't be intelligence if African American children did better. Which is horrible. And then there's Lewis Terman in 1916, He is the person who published the Stanford-Binet IQ test, one of the most popular tests still used today. He is quoted on saying this: "Mental retardation is very common among Spanish, Indians, and Mexican families of the Southwest, and also among Negroes. Their dullness seems to be racial," which is horrible. So, what else could be affecting this? What else could make them think this? So, something that could be affecting your IQ scores is socio and economic status. So if you have less money, which many immigrants do, many immigrants come over with not a ton of money and are working hard, then they probably live in an area with less money to put towards schools. A lower income neighborhood has less money to fund public schools, and therefore they receive a lower quality of education and then don't have all of the knowledge for these questions. Is that their fault? And I just said knowledge for these questions, not intelligence. So that indicates that the questions aren't even asking the right thing. And then there's also predetermined outcomes. Similar to that test of the white versus black children. He rejected that intelligence test because it didn't give him the result he wanted. So people see what they want to see. And there's also a facet of this called the self-fulfilling prophecy. If people are told they're stupid, they're going to act stupid. They're going to do what society views them as. And there's actually been studies done on this. It's really, really interesting. So if you ask African Americans what their race is before a test, just simply what their race is, if you just have one of those questionnaires, of demographics and be like, circle your race, just right before they take a test, then they will do worse than a group that was not asked about race. Just simply because they were reminded about their race and the stereotype that they are not as academically fit. And a similar thing is true about women. So if you ask women what their gender is before a math test, specifically a math test, because there's that stereotype that women are bad at math, then they will do worse than a group that was not asked about their gender. It's crazy. And both of the groups that were not asked about race or gender do about the same as a white group or a men group. So what are the silver linings of these measurements? We talked a lot about what's wrong with them. Is there anything right with them? Why do we use them? Well, these IQ tests have been used for many, many years. And that means that they're standardized and high reliability. So what that means is a person can take it 5 days in a row and get very similar results. They will probably slowly improve because of the ability to get better and better at the test. And it's also standardized because so many people have taken it, and we're able to find this general bell curve and pattern of intelligence with it. And it's important to know that there is constant refinement of these questions. They are constantly trying to work on these questions to make them better and more accurate indicators of intelligence. And specifically, they are trying to reduce bias, and they're trying to improve validity. They're trying to make it a valid measure of intelligence, not just knowledge. And the IQ actually does correlate with some important things. It correlates with academic achievement. People who do well in school tend to have higher IQs. And people with higher IQs tend to perform better at their jobs. So that is something to say about the IQ. Those are two very good indicators. But still, does that mean it's an indicator of intelligence? Academic achievement's knowledge, right? Knowledge is not intelligence.